The last rebel's head hit the floor with a sound like a dropped coconut, and the Empire's assassin didn't even flinch. Somewhere in the silence, a half-lit neon sign buzzed the word "Hope" in broken letters. Blood trickled past it like it was in on the joke. From a hilltop just outside the outpost, a man in grease-stained overalls popped the last piece of cold pizza into his mouth, watching the massacre through binoculars he found in a pawn shop. He chewed slowly, swallowed, and muttered with a sigh, "Guess it's my turn again." He wiped his hands on a napkin that once served as a parking ticket and stood up. Behind him, a moth-eaten flag fluttered, an Earth emblem so faded it looked more like a coffee stain. 3 days earlier, Jude Cale was under a rusted hovercar in the Detroit reclamation zone, trying to convince a stubborn bolt to cooperate. The bolt disagreed. His wrench slipped and punched his knuckles into cold metal. He let out a string of curses so creative, they briefly offended a nearby vending machine. He rolled out from under the car, looked at his hand, and laughed bitterly. Perfect. Just perfect. That's when the drone crashed into his garage. It wasn't a dramatic entrance, no explosion, no fanfare. The thing sputtered, stammered out a few static garbled notes of Beethoven, then exploded like a cheap firework, scattering gears and parts across the room. At the center of the small crater, blinking red, was a data stick labeled in an outdated military code he hadn't seen since the last time he died. "Come on," Jude said to no one, wiping dust off the stick. "I unplugged from this crap years ago." He plugged it into a rusted console. The screen flickered to life, showing a symbol that made his stomach sink: Earth Defense Protocol, active. A line of text followed. Jude Cale, reactivation override. You are hereby deployed. Denial option, revoked. Jude groaned like someone with a hangover at a 6 a.m. funeral. He reached for a beer. The fridge refused to open. "Oh great, you're in on it too now?" The AI embedded in the fridge, an ancient, cranky model named Minimarge, flashed a message. Calories restricted. Deployment status confirmed. Within hours, old implants under Jude's skin began to reboot. The painful kind. It started in his spine, like someone forcing a USB stick into the wrong port. Then the back of his neck lit up like a firework. The tattoos on his arms shimmered, revealing long-buried neural links. His left eye flashed blue. Zella, his old mission AI, booted up. Or so he thought. "Hey, a soldier! Welcome back to service. Gosh, it's been, 6.7 years. You look different. Kinda soft. Let's work on that." Jude blinked. "You're not Zella." "I'm Zella 2.0, the AI chirped. "Now with emotional support features and sarcasm detection." "You're welcome." He stared at the blinking interface in the corner of his vision. "You're kidding." "Nope. And according to my sarcasm detector, that's a get out of my brain tone. Don't worry, you'll get used to me." "Maybe." Jude spent the next 2 days trying to override the override. Earth's council had locked him in good. No one had heard from them in a decade, and now suddenly they wanted him back in the field? Just because a few assassins had started wiping out colonies near the border? Let someone else handle it. He was done. Finished. Retired with extreme prejudice. But when the first wave hit Alpha Beta outposts, and the footage leaked of bodies, burned, dissected, some still twitching, he knew. It wasn't a purge. It was something worse. Earth had been quiet for too long. Now, standing on that hill, Jude snapped shut the metal case containing the last cold slice of Earth-style pizza, brushed crumbs off his jacket, and watched as a massive dropship descended into the crater of what used to be the rebel outpost. 5 Empire operatives marched out. Smooth movements. Mirror-polished armor. Faces hidden behind obsidian masks shaped like predator skulls. They didn't even check for survivors. Why bother? They were efficient. They were ruthless. And they were getting closer. Jude powered up his suit. It whined like an old blender full of gravel. He punched the chest plate. The whine smoothed out. The HUD flickered on. "Initializing combat loadout," Zella 2.0 said. Warning, estimated survival chance for this encounter, 0.5%. Want me to play your favorite playlist? Not unless it has bagpipes and screaming. Got it. Viking death metal coming up. He slid down the hill and landed behind a wrecked crawler. The first operative turned at the noise, raising a pulse rifle. Jude didn't hesitate. He pulled a combat knife from his boot and hurled it. The blade hit the rifle's barrel, sparking a short circuit. The second operative turned, but Jude was already moving. 3 minutes later, 4 bodies lay broken in the dust. The fifth operative was on one knee, visor cracked, wheezing through a damaged vocalizer. Jude walked up, pulled the visor off, and froze. The face beneath was human. Not cybernetic. Not modified. Just young. Terrified. What the hell? Jude whispered. You're from Earth. The boy nodded slowly. His chest was bleeding out. Why are they using Earthborn assassins? Jude asked. I don't know, the boy gasped. They told me you were the virus. That your DNA was the reason. Reason for what? For the purge. Then he died. Zella was silent for once. Jude stood there, heart pounding, watching the Empire dropship lift off and vanish into the clouds. Guess I'm not retired anymore, he muttered. Then he turned, cracked his knuckles, and started walking. Time to make a few calls. Time to get loud. 4-0. Jude hated space stations. They smelled like sweat and burnt circuits, and the recycled air always tasted faintly of sadness and hot dogs. The station above Blood Nebula 9 was no different, except this one had also been partially shredded by plasma fire. As he drifted through the ruined docking bay in a half-functional EVA suit, Zella 2.0 piped up in her usual chipper tone, reminding him that the oxygen scrubbers were at 34% and steadily dropping. Jude grunted and pushed off a twisted metal beam, propelling himself deeper into the station's guts. No life signs, according to the scan. But Jude knew better. No life signs just meant whoever was left was either hiding or setting a trap. He'd seen the footage from the last outpost. This was where the second kill squad had gone. Another silent visit, another pile of corpses. But the logs hinted at something odd. One last life form had blinked online 2 hours after the attack ended, then disappeared. Jude followed the trail to a data node barely hanging from the ceiling by a sparking wire. He reached out to touch it when a plasma bolt sizzled past his ear, vaporizing a chunk of wall behind him. Jude rolled sideways mid-float, kicked off a wall, and drew his sidearm in the same motion. His attacker was a blur of limbs and shadow, firing wildly and swearing with impressive fluency. When they finally ran out of ammo and tried to reload, Jude fired once, clean through the barrel of their gun. It exploded in their hands, knocking them backward into a pile of debris. Jude floated over, grabbed them by the collar of their pressure suit, and yanked off the helmet. The face underneath was younger than he expected. Maybe 17, covered in grime, eyes blazing with fear and fury. The kid spat in his face. Jude sighed, wiped it off, and said, "You done?" "I'm not telling you anything," the kid snapped. "Cool. I wasn't asking." Jude looked at the half-destroyed terminal behind them. "But that thing might." "Don't touch it," the kid yelled. "That's the only thing keeping this place from blowing." Jude froze. "Define blowing." "As an explosive decompression, vacuum death, and all the jazz that comes with it," the kid said. "So yeah, maybe don't poke the sparking wires like a curious raccoon." Jude let go and floated back a few inches. "Fine. Start with your name." "Rin." "Just Rin." "All right, Rin, just Rin. You're gonna tell me why you're hiding out on a slaughterhouse station and why the Empire just tried to deep fry every organic on board." Rin gave him a long look, then smirked slightly. "You're Jude Kale, aren't you?" Jude blinked. "What?" "You're kind of famous. Earthborn rogue agent. Used to kill for breakfast. You've got memes." Zella 2.0 chimed in. "She's not wrong. One of your memes got over 6 million upvotes on Galnet." The one where you're holding a grenade like a bouquet? Classic. I'm never gonna live that down, Jude muttered. Rin leaned back and crossed her arms. The Empire's hunting people with specific genetics. Started around 4 months ago. They're not targeting rebels, they're targeting people descended from Earth. Jude felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's failing climate systems. How do you know that? Because I hacked into their targeting archive, Rin said with a small, proud smile. This station had an old relay hub. I rerouted it and got lucky. That's how you survived. Bingo. I ghosted myself from their scans. They thought the place was clean. Jude looked at her again, this time more carefully. She had the look of someone who'd been living on borrowed time too long, jittery, stubborn, too smart for her own good. He sighed. All right, kid. You're coming with me. Oh no. No way. I work solo. Cool. You can solo your way into suffocating when this station vents its last lungful of air. She grumbled something about old people being pushy, but she followed him anyway. They barely made it back to his ship before the station finally gave out. One last groan of metal, and then the whole upper half tore away in a slow, silent explosion. Jude watched it from the cockpit as he sipped stale coffee. Rin stood beside him, eyes wide. You named this thing the Trash Comet? It's aspirational, Jude said. Sounds like something a drunk raccoon would steal. You're really leaning into the raccoon metaphors today. I find them relatable. Zella interrupted. Incoming transmission, encrypted signature. It's Empire origin, but it's not from command. Jude straightened. Play it. The screen flickered, then displayed a dark room, lit only by the eerie glow of crimson lights. A figure stood in the center, tall, armored, face obscured by a visor shaped like a skull. The Harvester. Jude recognized him immediately, even though it had been over a decade. Hello, Kale, the voice said. Deep, smooth, and cold. It's been a while. Jude didn't reply. He just stared. I see you've picked up a stray. The girl. Clever. Earth always did breed clever rats. Rin flinched slightly but said nothing. You abandoned me, the Harvester said, stepping forward into the light. His armor shimmered with etched runes and circuit lines that pulsed like veins. But I'm not angry. I'm just repurposing the past. What do you want? Jude said. You. Your DNA. Your memories. Your core code. You know that makes no sense, right? You're the original, the Harvester said. The Alpha. You're the key to ending this bloodline. You are Earth's virus. The screen cut off. Rin exhaled sharply. That wasn't ominous at all. Jude sat back. His hands were clenched into fists, and his jaw ached. He hadn't thought about his old squad in years. The Harvester was supposed to be dead. Left behind during a mission gone sideways on Titan's rings. Jude had made the call. The only call. Now it looked like the man he'd left behind had become the monster the Empire needed. He's coming, Jude said quietly. Zella replied. Do you want to run? No, Jude said. I want to find out why the hell the Empire is using Earth-born assassins to kill their own. And I want to end it. Rin nodded, as if it was already decided. You in? Jude asked her. I hacked a death squad and lived. I'm already past the sensible decisions phase of my life. Jude couldn't help the small, tired smile that crept across his face. For the first time in a long while, he didn't feel entirely alone in this. The galaxy had gone mad. Earth was on someone's hit list. And Jude Kale had just gotten pissed. Jude had been in some bizarre places during his time as a soldier, smuggler, and accidental fugitive, but this was the weirdest. The lab sat inside an asteroid shaped like a tooth, spinning just outside the gravitational pull of a dying sun. Entry was granted through a code embedded in a knock-knock joke, and Jude hated how hard he laughed when it worked. The interior was worse. The walls were decorated with what looked like hand-drawn blueprints, snack wrappers, and an unreasonable number of motivational posters. And sitting cross-legged on a floating chair in the middle of the chaos was a man who looked like he hadn't slept in 3 years and might actually be a cat. "Dr. Grelk, I presume," Jude said, eyeing the man's twitching ears. The man licked the back of his hand and blinked slowly. "Depends. Are you from the Empire, the tax authority, or someone selling religion? I'm the guy who's trying not to shoot you." "Ah, good. That's my favorite kind of visitor." Rin leaned close to Jude and whispered, "You're sure this is the guy with the Earthline data?" "He's the only one left alive who worked on it," Jude replied, then louder. "We need access to the Earthline protocol records. We know the Empire's using it to target people. We need to know why." Grelk purred, or maybe cleared his throat. It was hard to tell. He stood, tail swishing behind him, and gestured to a console littered with snack crumbs and broken styluses. "Earthline. Earthline. That was the genetic coding project, 50 years ago? 60? They brought me in to optimize memory transfer between cloned agents and base genomes. It was fun until people started dying." "You helped create the assassins," Rin said, eyes narrowing. "I helped create the theory," Grelk replied, suddenly defensive. "The application was aggressively misinterpreted." "Explain," Jude said, stepping closer. Grelk sighed and padded over to the console, typing with claws that clicked with every keystroke. Earthline was a backdoor project buried under a bunch of noble-sounding initiatives. The idea was to build superior operatives based on Earth-native DNA, resilience, adaptability, emotional volatility. Turns out humanity's genetic chaos makes for excellent killers. The twist? They used live Earth-born donors without permission. You, for example, Jude Kale, are patient zero. Jude felt his stomach tighten. "What do you mean, patient zero?" Grelk pulled up a series of DNA sequences and overlaid them with military identifiers. "You were the first full test subject to survive all 3 upgrade cycles. Physical, neural, emotional. Your genome is the base template for over 6,000 operatives." "That's not possible," Jude muttered. "It's not only possible," Grelk said. "It's why they're hunting you. The Earthline protocol has a failsafe. If the base genome becomes unstable, or disloyal, it could trigger a systemic breakdown in every clone linked to it." Rin stared at the screen. "So if they kill Jude, they kill every Earthline assassin?" "No," Grelk corrected. "If they preserve Jude and recode his DNA to loyalty, they can restabilize the entire network. If they kill him, they just reset the problem and start again with the second highest match." Jude rubbed his temples. "This is some next-level Frankenstein garbage." "I preferred the term genetic artistry," Grelk said with a shrug. Before Jude could reply, alarms blared. The console lit up in red. A proximity alert showed a fast-approaching ship with no identification and weapons primed. "That's them," Jude said. "No," Grelk whispered, ears folding back. "That's him." The harvester had arrived. The lab shuddered as the ship latched onto the outer hull with a magnetic clamp. Grelk hit a button, sealing interior doors and activating defensive drones, which promptly exploded because he'd forgotten to replace the batteries. "Oops. You're really not good at this not dying thing," Rin muttered. "Agreed," Jude said, pulling his rifle off his back. Zella came online with a soft chime. "Recommending retreat. Combat odds against Harvester in enclosed space are, you know what, let's not even say it." "No retreat," Jude said. "We end this now." The doors buckled as the Harvester forced his way through. His armor was even more terrifying up close, scarred, warped, and humming with power. He moved like liquid steel, and Jude barely managed to roll aside before the floor where he stood was punched into molten slag. They clashed. Jude's rifle was useless after the first shot. The Harvester moved too fast. He switched to hand, using old combat routines buried in muscle memory. But the Harvester was stronger, faster, and meaner. Every hit felt like being struck by a meteor. Rin tried to help, using a modified stun baton, but the Harvester shrugged it off like a tickle. Jude was thrown across the lab, crashing into a stack of data servers. Sparks flew. Blood ran down his temple. He was done. Finished. Again. But then Grelk did something no one expected. He ran straight at the harvester, holding a device blinking furiously in his hands. "Back up your soul, metal boy!" Grelk yelled, and jammed it into the harvester's back. The harvester roared. Electricity surged. His systems flickered. Rin grabbed Jude's arm and dragged him out of the collapsing lab as the harvester thrashed, tearing through the equipment, and screaming like a broken god. They made it back to the trash comet, barely escaping the exploding asteroid behind them. Jude collapsed in the pilot's seat, chest heaving. "He's not dead," Rin said quietly. "No," Jude replied. "But now he's glitching. That gives us a window," Zella chimed in. "Grelk's last message is downloading now. It's a blueprint. A facility deep in Empire space. The cloning labs. The source of the Earthline network." Jude sat up. "Then that's where we go next." Rin looked at him, bruised and bloodied. "This is suicide. Not if we blow it all up first." She smiled, despite everything. "I really hope you're as good at this as the memes say." Jude chuckled dryly. "Even better. They didn't have access to Viking death metal." Jude had stolen ships before, but never one the size of a small city. The Empire dreadnought loomed ahead like a metal god, rotating slowly above the gas giant Vexus Prime, its gravitational field so strong it warped nearby calms. The vessel was called the Archon's Mercy, though Jude suspected there was very little mercy involved in its daily operations. It was the heart of Earthline operations, a floating fortress that housed not just a fleet of assassins, but the very servers and biovats that birthed them. And now, somehow, it was going to be his. They had exactly one shot. The rebel contact who had smuggled out the access codes warned them it was a rotating schedule, one security window every 6 hours, 2 minutes long, where the external sensors reset during AI maintenance. That was their hole. That was their miracle. Of course, it would have been easier if their stolen transport ship hadn't looked like a flaming garbage truck, or if Zella wasn't currently stuck in diagnostic mode due to a corrupted backup of Grelk's cat memes. But Jude had long since stopped hoping for ideal conditions. All he needed was a pulse rifle, a half-baked plan, and someone crazy enough to follow him into the abyss. Rin floated beside him in the cockpit, wired into the ship's NAV system with a neural jack she'd built from parts of an old soda machine. Her eyes were unfocused, her lips moving as she rerouted systems, disabled pings, and sent ghost signals ahead to trick the dreadnought into seeing them as a sanitation vessel. Which, in fairness, wasn't far from the truth. The trash comet had once been a waste hauler before Jude turned it into an underdog miracle. "You're sure you want to do this?" she asked without looking at him. "No," Jude replied, tightening the strap on his chest plate. "But I'm doing it anyway." They breached the perimeter with a smoothness that almost felt insulting. As their ship docked, automated servos extended, latching onto their hull and sucking them into the hangar bay like they were just another delivery. No alarms. No guards. Nothing. "That's weird," Rin said. "It's a trap," Jude said instantly. "But a polite one," she added. They disembarked into an eerily empty corridor. The dreadnought was massive, the interior designed like a cathedral for warfare. Tall ceilings, reinforced floors, echoing silence. Zella finally came back online with a lazy flicker in Jude's HUD. "Welcome back," she said. "I had to purge about 72 gigabytes of cat-themed motivational posters. I am traumatized." "Join the club," Jude muttered. They reached the command bridge with minimal resistance. Too minimal. Even Zella noticed it. Scanning ahead, no active life signs in the bridge. "Defensive systems are on standby. It's like they want you there." Jude cracked his neck. "Perfect." They entered the bridge expecting guns. Instead, they got an audience. Half a dozen humanoid figures stood in perfect stillness around the command dais, each a different generation of Earthline clone. They didn't move. didn't breathe. Statues made of war and silence. At the center stood the harvester. He had removed his helmet. His face was old and now scarred, the skin tight over steel implants that snaked down his neck like living wires. His eyes glowed faintly. He smiled when he saw Jude. "Welcome home." "This was never my home," Jude growled, gun already raised. The harvester didn't flinch. "You think you're destroying something. But you're not. You're completing it. You're insane." "I'm free," the harvester said calmly. "The Empire thinks it controls Earthline. But Earthline evolved. You gave us chaos, Jude. You gave us pain. And we became gods." Rin tried to trigger the explosive charges she'd planted along the ship's central systems. Nothing responded. "Locked out," she said. The harvester chuckled. "Of course. You think I didn't anticipate this?" He moved fast, too fast. The first hit knocked Jude across the command center. The second crumpled his left gauntlet. Rin ducked and tried to hack into the mainframe, jamming wires into a console even as sparks singed her hair. Zella screamed through Jude's HUD. "He's overriding your neural inhibitors. He's trying to force a loyalty reset." Jude growled and bit down on a capsule in his jaw. Pain surged through his body as countermeasures flared, burning out the corrupted link and nearly knocking him unconscious. But it worked. His mind was his again. He rose and charged. The fight was raw, primal, nothing like the clean, choreographed combat of Sims. Jude fought dirty. He used debris, loose cables, anything within reach. He got a lucky blow under the harvester's arm, driving a blade into the wiring. The harvester screamed, not in pain, but in rage. "You still don't get it," he spat. "You can't kill this. We're inside the system now. You take me down, another rises. Then I'll keep punching until you stop talking." Jude snapped, and slammed his fist into the harvester's face, again and again, until something cracked. Rin shouted from the console. "I've got Zella jacked into the core. I can trigger a jump, but it's going to burn the entire NAV system." "Do it!" Jude yelled. The harvester staggered forward, blood and oil pouring from his mouth. "You won't make it out." Jude grabbed him by the neck. "Neither will you." The jump ignited. The ship twisted through space, screaming against its own systems. The dreadnought, not built for blind hyperspace jumps, tore apart mid-translation. Jude, Rin, and Zella barely escaped, flung in a mangled escape pod that landed like a meteor on a backwater moon used for rebel refueling. The pod cracked open. Smoke billowed. Jude coughed and crawled out, dragging Rin behind him. She was alive, but unconscious, burns down her arms. Zella rebooted slowly, flickering in his vision like a dying candle. "You made it," she said weakly. "Where's the harvester?" "Gone. Ship lost integrity." He was still on the bridge. Jude fell to his knees and laughed bitterly. "Well, that's something." Medics rushed in minutes later, alerted by the emergency beacon. Rebel scouts pulled them into a med cruiser. Word spread fast. Jude Kale had destroyed the Earthline core. The harvester was dead. The cloning project was in shambles. They wanted to call him a hero. He just wanted a shower and something that didn't taste like recycled despair. As he sat in the recovery chamber, bandaged and bruised, Rin stirred beside him. "Did we win?" she asked. "We broke their toy," Jude said. "That's a start." She smiled, eyes half-lidded. "You look awful. You should see the other guy." Outside, stars still burned. And somewhere in those stars, the Empire had just learned how far Earth was willing to go to protect its own. Jude closed his eyes and exhaled. This wasn't over. But for now, they had survived. The rebel base was carved into a cliffside on a forgotten moon, camouflaged by thick clouds and electromagnetic interference. From above, it looked like just another rocky wasteland, but inside, it buzzed with whispers and footsteps, engineers scrambling to repair what remained of the fleet, and medics patching up soldiers who'd survived battles they never thought they would. In one of the larger halls, surrounded by mismatched chairs and questionably assembled decorations, someone had the audacity to hold a funeral. For Jude Kale. They had a banner. It was made out of old uniform pieces stitched together with what looked like fishing line, and someone had written Jude's name in duct-taped letters across the front. There was even a slideshow. The images flickered against the stone wall, grainy stills from old military records, propaganda posters, and to Jude's eternal horror, several memes that featured him in wildly exaggerated poses, one involving a flaming sword and a riding turtle. Behind the crowd, up on a ledge, hidden from sight, Jude watched with a lukewarm cup of protein coffee in his hand and a mix of confusion and embarrassment on his face. Beside him, wrapped in a thermal blanket and still healing, Rin chewed on a snack bar and snorted every few minutes. "They really thought you died," she said. "Yeah," Jude muttered. "Apparently I'm better as a memory. You are more photogenic when you're not scowling." "I'm always scowling." "Exactly." He took another sip, grimaced, and tossed the rest of the coffee off the edge. Below, someone gave a heartfelt eulogy about sacrifice, legacy, and how Jude once punched a sentient vending machine because it stole his credits. It got a round of applause. Rin leaned over the edge and whistled. "Should we ruin the mood?" "Not yet," Jude said. "Let them have this." They stayed until the slideshow looped back to the first image, then quietly slipped away into the base corridors. Outside, under the cold light of alien stars, the air felt different. Lighter. Not hopeful, exactly, but maybe on its way there. The Empire hadn't collapsed, but its teeth had been knocked loose. The Earthline program was crippled. And with the Harvester gone, their most dangerous weapon was silenced. Zella pinged in Jude's neural link, fully reassembled and annoyingly enthusiastic. She had merged with what was left of the dreadnought's AI core, which meant she was smarter, faster, and 10 times more sarcastic. "Good news," she said. "The Empire just released a statement claiming you were an unauthorized clone experiment. They're calling you a rogue malfunction. You've been officially disowned by a galactic superpower." "Nice," Jude said. "Do I get a cake?" "Already baking one in your honor." "Metaphorically." Rin had been unusually quiet since the jump. She still moved like herself, quick, sharp, always scanning the room, but there was a heaviness behind her eyes. The price of survival. She had lost more than just equipment in that last battle. Her neural implants were burned out. No more direct connection to systems, no more silent hacking. She was human now, in the rawest, most inconvenient way. Jude found her later on the observation deck, staring at the stars. He walked up beside her, leaned on the railing, and didn't say anything for a while. "I keep hearing static," she said finally. "Even when there's nothing." "Phantom signal," Jude said. "Takes time to fade. I don't know who I am without the code. You're the one who saved the galaxy with a screwdriver and bad attitude. That's who you are." She smiled a little. "Thanks. I guess you're not completely useless." "I try." A klaxon blared in the distance, brief, sharp, but different from the usual alerts. Zella cut in almost instantly. "Empire fleet incoming. Small unit. 10 destroyers. Flagship at the front. They're heading straight for Earth." Jude straightened. "They're retaliating. They're desperate," Rin said. The Rebel Council assembled quickly. Debates flared, plans spun into motion, but in the end, everyone looked to Jude. It wasn't about rank anymore. It was about reputation. He was the reason they were still breathing. And Earth was his home. "We intercept," Jude said. "We don't wait for them to show up on our doorstep." "You're in no condition to lead," someone said. "I'm always in no condition to lead," he replied. "Doesn't mean I won't." The fleet they had was small, patched together from stolen ships, old tech, and miracles. But they had something the Empire didn't anymore: freedom. People willing to fight for something they weren't programmed to believe in. The trash comet led the charge, retrofitted and armed with stolen cannons, and at its helm, Jude stood with Rin beside him and Zella in every system. The battle above Earth was chaotic, violent, and beautiful. The Empire expected easy resistance. What they got was a coordinated strike from rebels, pirates, hackers, and smugglers, all working like they trained for it. Rin directed fire from the auxiliary deck, working manually now, but every shot she called hit home. Zella overloaded the flagship's firewalls, turning its cannons inward. Jude took the trash comet straight into the heart of the enemy formation, unleashing a storm of plasma that lit up the sky like a supernova. The Empire flagship fired a direct blast, cutting through rebel lines, carving a hole in the defense. Jude didn't hesitate. He rerouted all power to the forward shields and drove the trash comet through the flames. The impact rocked the ship, tore panels free, and sent him flying into the bulkhead. When he pulled himself up, the enemy flagship was burning, listing sideways, its systems collapsing. The rest of the fleet scattered. It was over. In the aftermath, Earth sent its first real message in decades. A single sentence broadcast across every channel, every system, every corner of the galaxy. You deployed killers. We deployed him. Jude stood on the surface of Earth for the first time in years, the soil under his boots, the wind against his face, and the sun rising in a sky no longer owned by tyrants. Rin stood beside him, watching the horizon. We actually did it, she said. For now, Jude replied. There's always another fight. Think you'll retire again? I've tried that. Doesn't stick. She laughed. Well, you could always become a motivational speaker. Or open a pizza shop. Only if I get to name it Kale's Deep Dish Justice. They stood there a little longer, watching the clouds roll in. The Empire wasn't finished, not completely. But neither were they. And now, the galaxy knew Earth could bite back.